Hello and welcome to this presentation on religious affinity bias in the selection of a financial advisor. 66% of Americans believe that their financial planning needs improvement, and Americans say that having a financial advisor boosts their confidence, yet only 37% actually work with one. Additionally, by working with a financial advisor, individual investors can add 3% in net returns. So while too few Americans are choosing to work with a financial advisor, even today we don't have a good understanding of how this process works. We don't have a good measuring stick for what factors are involved in this selection process and what are the subsequent results. So this brings us to my research question, which is, does religious affinity bias influence choice in the selection of a financial advisor? The purpose of this study is to investigate the correlation between religious affinity bias and the selection of a financial advisor. This research seeks to establish preliminary findings into potential and relevant associations in this process, and the ultimate goal is to improve and enhance self-awareness and financial planning relationships. The four primary long-term goals of this research are to, number one, develop a descriptive model for how clients currently do select a financial advisor. Number two, develop a descriptive model for what does the current financial advisor and client relationship look like. And this is in terms of effectiveness or levels of satisfaction. Number three, develop a prescriptive model for how clients should select a financial advisor. And lastly, develop a prescriptive model for what should the financial advisor and client relationship look like. So the theoretical framework for this study is research on the theory of implicit social cognition, and this is commonly referred to as implicit bias. It was first termed by Greenwald and Panachi in 1995. And their original work proposed that responses, or R, are the result of unconscious constructs, C, and these are produced by unidentified or inaccurately identified prior stimuli. Thus, our decisions or our conscious actions are the result of unconscious beliefs or attitudes. And the result is that interactions or relationships are formed based on implicit constructs. There are three themes that stood out from the literature review, and the first one is religiosity, which is defined as the quality or state of being religious or having a sense of religious feelings or devotions. And religiosity connects like-minded people. So we can have people who share religious feelings or religious convictions, and these shared beliefs bring people together. Price et al. Note that religious affiliation may be correlated with unobserved factors that affect behavior. So this is the introduction of an idea that based on religious beliefs, there may be influences there that affect choices. And since Weber's work in the 1930s, scholars have hypothesized that religious identities affect individuals' economic outcomes. So this is the idea that these religious convictions lead to people identifying with their religion, such as a person who identifies as being Catholic, and that their religious beliefs may affect their financial outcomes. So this theory has existed for nearly a century now, and the idea is that there could be some connection between religious beliefs and economic outcomes. And lastly, Renneboog and Spaniards, in a study of data from the Netherlands, find that religious household heads were more likely to save or set aside money for savings than non-religious individuals. So again, it's the connection of this idea that people have religious beliefs, and these religious beliefs can affect their behaviors, which may affect their economic outcomes. The second theme from the literature review is affinity. And affinity is where people favor those who are similar to themselves, and is typically considered an unconscious bias or an implicit bias. And as noted in Suverin, people may assume that they are not susceptible to biases and stereotypes. However, they cannot avoid engaging in them. So consciously, we are aware of the similarity. It could be shared religious beliefs, it could be gender, it could be any one of a number of similarities. However, we're not consciously aware of how that similarity affects our attitudes or even our choices. So Klein et al. Find evidence of affinity bias in the form of implicit gender bias in attitudes towards financial advisors. And in this study, they found that males were more likely to have negative feelings towards female financial advisors. So again, this is the idea that we aren't completely aware of how our unconscious biases affect our choices. And at the top, we have what's called an implicit bias, and a form of implicit bias is affinity bias. And so we are not completely aware of how these preferences for similarity affect choices. And the third theme from the literature review is relationships. So our relationships are based on interactions and are interdependent. Lang and Balliet note that the interactions can be described through the equation of the interaction as a function of the situation and person A and person B. So we have person A and person B and the situation all interacting together to form a composite, which we call an interaction, and this is the basis for a relationship. And so the financial advisor and the client form a relationship, and the purpose of this relationship is to maximize the output such that the combined output is greater than the individual output. And so in this situation, we have a financial advisor, which would be person A, and person B, which is the client, and they come together to form a financial plan. And how these two people interact with each other in the situation is the beginning of the relationship. And so going back to the original question, which is, does religious affinity bias influence choice in the selection of a financial advisor? Ultimately, our goal is to understand what makes for a good relationship between a financial advisor and a client, as well as understanding the factors that go into the formation of that relationship, with a more specific question about certain biases involved or potentially involved in that formation. This brings us to the two hypotheses of this study, which is H1, shared religious beliefs will be positively correlated with the likelihood to accept an initial meeting with a financial advisor. And this is from the question, which financial advisor are you more likely to meet with for an initial financial planning conversation? And H2, which is shared religious beliefs will be positively correlated with the likelihood to form a professional working relationship with a financial advisor by agreeing to establish and implement a long-term financial plan. And this is based off of the question, you have now met with two different financial advisors. Which financial advisor are you more likely to meet with again to establish a long-term financial plan? The research design and methodology for this study are to use primary data from a survey using Amazon Mechanical Turk, using two financial advisor profile vignettes, one which indicates shared religious beliefs by attending the same church, and the other one which doesn't. And which financial advisor one is more likely to choose is the binary dependent variable, and shared religious beliefs by attending the same church is the independent variable. And a t-test and regression analysis will be performed, controlling for income, gender, race, education, and political affiliation. And one additional important note is that a religious association can be either an explicit religious association or an implicit religious association. So an explicit religious association is one where religious beliefs are specifically stated. For example, if you have two people at a park and they strike up a conversation and one mentions to the other that he is Catholic, and then the other one mentions also that he is Catholic, then in this case we have an explicit religious association. However, we could also have an implicit religious association where two people are at the same religious event and neither one of them at any time specifically says their religious beliefs, but because they are at this event for people with similar beliefs, it may be implied that they do share religious beliefs. And the focus of this study is not on whether it is an explicit or implicit religious association that is established in the profile vignettes. The focus of this study is whether those shared religious beliefs influence the selection of a financial advisor. Here I have a sample profile vignette, and this one is for a financial advisor, Adam J. Adam is a local financial advisor who has reached out to you to invite you to meet with him to have a conversation about your current financial plan. You have known him personally for about 5 years, and he is well respected in the community. He attends the same church as you do, and he has a bachelor's degree in finance from a local state university. And the second profile vignette is Stephen C. Stephen is a local financial advisor. He has also reached out to you to invite you in for a conversation about your current financial plan. You've also known him for about 5 years, and he's well respected in the community and also has a bachelor's degree from a local state university. And the implications from this study are: number one, that results may indicate no perceived association between religious affinity bias and the likelihood to meet with or form a relationship with a financial advisor. And the conclusion from that would be that religious affinity bias is not or does not appear to be involved in the selection of a financial advisor. Or number two, results may indicate a perceived association between religious affinity bias and the likelihood to meet with or form a relationship with a financial advisor, at which point the conclusion would be that religious affinity bias is not or does not appear to be involved in the selection of a financial advisor. Additional implications of this research are that since very little is known on the comparative effectiveness of financial advisors, we can develop a prescriptive model for what the financial planner and client relationship should look like. And since research is lacking on how the relationship should form versus how it does form, we can develop a prescriptive model on how the relationship should form versus how it currently does form. In summary, we do know that some people have a sense of religious feelings and devotions, and that these religious beliefs bring like-minded people together. We also know that people are attracted to each other based on similarities. What we don't know is how financial advisors and clients form relationships, and we don't know whether religious affinity bias plays a role in the formation of some of these relationships. Thank you for joining me in this presentation. I hope you have found it interesting, and I look forward to hearing your feedback about this study. Thank you.